it's been really fun to have conversations with him because, again, I'm coming from the operator and going, but the guest will say this when they see this messaging. And from the marketing standpoint, it's like, they won't say that. I'm like, no, but they will. So kind of having those discussions has been good. And I think, I've taught him a few things. He's taught me a lot. But that's been really cool to be able to do because like you said, Josh, knowing it from that operator side, it's a whole different ballgame from the folks that are sitting in the back office pushing the content out.
Welcome to the AttractionPros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman, founder of BackLooper. I help attractions collect guest feedback and identify top priorities needed for improvement.
And I'm Matt Heller, founder of Performance Optimist Consulting. I help leaders lead so they can increase employee engagement and retention.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the AttractionPros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Matt, I am doing, you ready?
Yes.
Fantastic.
That was awesome. That was awesome. So,
how are you?
I am fantastic as well. Thanks for asking. I feel like I should have said something different, but that's kind of what came to my mind. I have a question for you, though.
All right.
Have you ever been to a woe zone?
I've never been to one, but let me tell you, I really want to, and I can't wait to visit one. I feel like when I do visit one, I will absolutely act like a child, and it will be very difficult to pry me away from it.
I would imagine that for you and for myself as well. If you don't know what a woe zone is, you've tuned into the right episode, because today we get to talk to Jen.Rice, who's the general manager of Empire Recreation Management and the woe zones. And these are inflatable, I'm just going to call them playgrounds on the water, on a lake, on a still body of water. Although sometimes the water, based on weather conditions, might get a little choppy. But this is, she described it as sort of a Ninja Warrior experience on the water. And that sold me right there. I mean, I think it looked really cool anyway, but that description really sold me.
Yeah, totally. I think what did she say the formal definition was? Water-based family entertainment center. But yeah, I mean, like you said, if you can imagine kind of a large playground on water, inflatable, aquatic-based, Ninja Warrior, obstacle course, just a whole day of fun family fun.
Exactly. And
fun twice.
That's how important fun is, though. So we get to talk to Jen. Now, you and I both have known Jen for quite a while, going all the way back to the IAPA Ambassador program. And, we both worked with her for a little bit at Universal. So, there's a lot of contact points along the way. And one of the things I'm really interested to ask her about is sort of not only how she got to where she is, but how the networking really impacted that, because that's something that you and I talk a lot about. We did our networking in a pandemic webinar, and that's something that we still get a lot of questions about, like what's the right way to network? And I think she has some really good advice for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, that's something that you and I are both, very passionate about and talk about a lot. So it's actually really cool to, I would say, connect the dots with Jen's story and how she talks about, she met her current boss at IAPA a couple of years ago and was able to maintain and foster that connection. And that led her into this incredible new role where she's overseeing multiple locations for this company. So it's fantastic. So it'll be great to be able to talk about that, talk about leadership and development and a lot of the things that we love to talk about, a lot of things that we love to ask our guests about. And of course, how the season of 2020 was with this very unique type of attraction and facility and the modifications that they needed to make to, of course, be able to safely operate in 2020. And what's really unique is that Jen started this position in April of 2020. So it'll be really interesting to hear how she kind of really went headfirst into, okay, here's all this experience that I now have in operations at Universal in a large theme park. And now let's take that and let's throw something into the mix that none of us have any experience in, because obviously in April, you and I were putting out videos every single day where we were asking people what's going on, and they were saying, I don't know. We don't know what to do. So it'll be great to get her insights on how she began this position with Empire Recreation Management, and how she's going to continue to lead into 2021 and beyond.
Well, I say let's get to some Woe Zone talk with Jen.
Whoa. Jen.Rice, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. It is so great to have you here on the podcast today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Josh and Matt. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to chat with you today. So, Jen, let's start by, can you tell us about your title? What do you do? What's your position these days?
Sure. So I, back a couple months ago, I started with a new company. I am the general manager for a company called Empire Recreation Management. And we also manage the Woe Zones, which I'm also the general manager for. So you're probably thinking, what is a Woe Zone? So a Woe Zone is kind of like it sounds. It is an awesome area of fun and woe. So we are water-based family entertainment centers. And our models range anywhere from our basic Woe Zone, which is an inflatable obstacle course. So basically think Ninja Warrior on the water, or maybe a version of Wipeout. So there's trampolines, there's balance beams, there's big rock walls that you can climb up and jump off of. It's just a ton of fun. Quite challenging, not for the weak of heart, I guess. So we got some really cool obstacles out there, but we've also got kids areas and all of that. So that's our basic model. But then we also range all the way to servicing campground, camp stores, and quick service food and beverage, along with kayak rentals, stand-up paddleboard rentals. And we're starting to dabble into some other areas of outdoor recreation. So we'll have more coming soon.
So lots of outdoor recreation stuff. I love it. So are your Woe Zones around campgrounds, or are they just kind of wherever there's a big body of water? What's your model there?
So a little of both, actually. And that's what's so great about the model, is that it's very flexible. So we are on open water. So we're typically out on lakes. We even have one location potentially this year out on an ocean, kind of in a calm area. But we've got 3 of our locations are actually inside state or city parks. So those are great locations. We form great partnerships with the parks, and of course can service all of the guests that are coming to the parks, and then the guests that are coming just to see us. But then we also have a couple of locations that are actually on private lakes. So some of those locations we partner with other vendors. We've got a wakeboarding company that shares a lake with us. But on those locations, again, a little bit different model. We're able to service the guests in a little different way.
So how much space do they take up on these lakes, or even on the ocean?
So again, one of the great things about Woe Zone, it's very flexible. We have parks that take up anywhere from, and I'm going to butcher this size-wise, but about a football field's worth, I would say, down to about half that, or maybe even less than that. So the pieces, and as you can see if you're watching on the YouTube, this is an example of a piece here. But the pieces can be plugged together in a variety of ways. So we can have them freestanding, or the majority of our parks, we actually put them together to form different obstacle courses. So most of our parks actually have 4 levels of challenge. So it could be anywhere from beginner to, I don't want to have to climb or jump. I just want to walk carefully across the Woe Zone, to the advanced, where you're having to jump from element to element, basically.
And I'm looking at that picture, and I've seen some of them online as well. So if you're watching again, there's a picture right behind Jen of what this looks like. Looks like everybody's got life vests, right? So you're taking safety very, very seriously. What other sort of considerations do you have? Because this isn't like strapping somebody onto a ride where you can control the restraint, right? So what other sort of safety considerations do you have to take in mind?
So absolutely. So with the life jackets, that's a great observation. Everybody must wear a life jacket in order to play on the Woe Zone. We also do require that you are able to swim. So even though you are in a life jacket, the water can get as deep as 12 to 15 feet in some spaces. Obviously you're jumping off big elements, we've got to have some depth there. So we want to make sure that everybody stays safe. The other piece of that is we have lifeguards on duty at all times. The WOW zone only operates, with our lifeguards out there. And our lifeguards, not only are they certified, most of them through the Red Cross, but we do additional in-services and trainings, just to keep their skills sharp, and make sure that they are able to rescue if needed on the WOW zone, because of course that is a lot different than a lifeguarding position maybe at your city pool. So we do a lot of training when it comes to taking the equipment apart and moving people as needed. The other piece when it comes to safety, I think this is a good kind of transition into COVID. 2020, here we are in 2020. So it was kind of a crazy time to join a new company and start a new career. When I joined the team, we didn't know if we were going to be able to safely open and operate the WOW zones. We have locations in Indiana, Michigan, and Texas this past summer. And so of course too, we're looking at, because everything was down on the state level, we were looking at different regulations from state to state. So what was allowed in Texas was not okay in Michigan, for example. So that was something we really had to work through, was to figure out, how can we make sure that we keep our guests and our team safe, but still letting people get outdoors and experience that outdoor recreation. This summer was actually, I believe, the busiest summer in the camping world and outdoor recreation. It been a long time, because of course, people wanted to get outside and do things individually by themselves or with their families. So it was a really unique challenge to have, again, coming in as a new person as well, to kind of say, okay, I'm learning everything. And now we got to learn how to adapt to the world that we're in. But I'm happy to say we had a very safe and very successful summer at all of our locations this year. We implemented additional sanitizing procedures. So our life jackets were sanitized after each and every use. We also implemented additional sanitizing procedures for the WOW zone, some additional scrub downs in the morning and the evening, and then in between sessions. And I think our biggest win was we actually separated our bigger parks. So what used to be a large park, a big obstacle course, we would allow guests to go out, you get an hour experience, and then you come back in. This year, we actually split it up. So you would go out, experience one course for 30 minutes, rotate over, do the next course for 30 minutes, and another group would come out. And this actually allowed our guests to experience the entire WOW zone, but with a more limited contact group, so they were interacting with less guests. And then, of course, we did reduce our capacity as well, just so that it wouldn't get as crowded out on the WOW zone. The other couple pieces of safety that, in addition to COVID, but just in general that we've always practiced, is we do a safety orientation. So before all of our guests go out on the WOW zone, between each and every hour, they are getting a full rundown of the rules. We answer any questions. We usually make it a fun event, get the guest involved. We'll have guests that, will go on multiple sessions. So by the end, they can kind of do our safety spiel. So we like to get them involved and have fun. But of course, we're out on deep water, and we want to make sure that everybody is staying safe and having fun.
Yeah. So Jen, all those, additional procedures that you described, by today's standard, it sounds very normal. Oh, this is what everyone's doing. This is, this is the shift that we had to make. But back in April, when you first came in, all of this was still so blue sky and so much unknown. So curious, actually, what was it like for you coming in as this seasoned leader with, so much experience, coming from, so many years at Universal, now coming into something that you had no experience in, because none of us had any experience in how to operate in COVID times, and finding the new ways to kind of use what to maybe learn some of these unknowns and move forward to get to the end goal of safe operations and being able
absolutely.
to.
So I think it was challenging, but it was a fun challenge, because I think to know that it wasn't just us, that we weren't the only ones experiencing how to adapt and change the business. Like you said, the entire industry, the entire world, we all had to change. So I think that it actually, as bad as just in general 2020 has been, it actually was probably the best time that I could have joined, because it wasn't taking something I had known and had been doing the same way for, the past 5-10 years and really having to reshape how I thought about running an operation. I was able to go in with completely fresh eyes anyways and say, okay, well, this is just what it is. And we were able to plan and move forward from there. So as challenging as it was, I almost think it was a benefit that the timing really worked out as it did, because I guess I didn't know anything other than living in this world of COVID.
Right.
Yeah. Jen, I'm curious just from an operational standpoint, and I may be getting kind of, into the weeds a little bit, but when it comes to those obstacles, are they anchored like into the water or into the bedrock under the water, or how does that part work?
So that's a great question. And it's amazing the way the parks get installed and then taken down. Now, I will be totally honest, I am not out in the water with the wetsuit swimming down and putting them in, but we have a team of really talented guys. I mean, we've got some girls out there too, and some of our employees from the summer actually come and help out. But basically, kind of run down how it works is, we blow them up on land. We make sure they're clean, ready to go. No issues with them. We kind of test them, make sure they're good. Then we've got divers that actually go out and sink anchors down. So we've got anchors in the lake. We'll then kind of swim the Whibbit piece out, hook it to the anchor, and then we hook them all together. At the end of the summer, this is where, again, I think I was a little more involved, because at the end of the summer, we were breaking everything down. At the beginning of the year, I was really getting operations set up. But it is amazing how quickly we can get the equipment out of the water. But it's huge. If you can see the one behind me, it's huge. We're talking 800-900 pounds worth of material once it's deflated. So it really takes, it's a team effort, but we will keep the anchors down in the lake with buoys, and we'll sink them in the lakes that freeze. So basically next year, all we have to do is, release the buoy, and then we know right where all the equipment is, which is great if we leave the equipment in the same place. So this year, a little different setup, because of course we rearranged the obstacle courses.
That's really cool. So then what about from a daily standpoint, when you close at the end of the day, does everything just stay in place until the next day? And I guess what's stopping people from having a free for all overnight?
So great question. So yes, everything does stay up 24 hours a day. We will either provide security, or we've got security at the parks to make sure that if the park is open, so if there are guests out on the beach, that somebody is watching to make sure nobody's getting on to the equipment if we don't have a lifeguard out there. So we just monitor that. We also have found that earlier in the morning, the beaches are not very busy, so we don't have a lot of people out there, but we'll get out there early just again to make sure that everything is covered. But bad weather really impacts us. So at some of our locations, we've actually got a location on Lake Michigan up in Indiana. And that location, the weather can turn, in a matter of a couple hours, and you go from no waves to 4 or 5 foot waves. So in those locations, it's a little trickier. We really have to monitor the weather because there are times when the weather shifts and the waves get big like that. We have to get the equipment out. So there are times that everything will come out of the water in a matter of 2, 3, 4 hours. Now we're not putting it all away at that point. But if we don't get the equipment out and a big storm blows through, it's a lot of work. The next couple of days, we had a couple good Texas storms roll through this summer. So again, then we'll usually have to kind of close for an hour or two and rearrange. So it's a challenge, but we've got, like I said, we've got a really good team that it's kind of, you call and say, hey, it's go time, and they're on it.
That's awesome. So I have one more operational question, if you'll indulge me. So obviously
Sure.
We're dealing with inflatables. What happens if they aren't as inflated as they should be when they're out on the water?
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, it does happen sometimes. So luckily, we've got some really good durable equipment out there. But part of our opening and closing procedures for our lifeguards include checking the equipment. So every day they're checking to ensure that the equipment is attached, because if we start to float apart, that's an easy fall through for somebody. But in addition to that, we're feeling for if there are any holes. Usually, especially if we've got quite a few guests out there playing, it's pretty apparent if there is a hole or if there's a leak in something. We'll know pretty quickly. So typically, we're able to repair it either right there on the water, or if it's a bigger challenge, if it's something that really needs, to come off of the water, we'll usually swap the piece out and pull it in and repair it on land, or we'll send it back to our headquarters and then get it repaired in the shop. But luckily, and again, we make sure our guests aren't taking sharp objects out there and really monitoring that. So that really helps them, because typically they're just in their swimsuit and, their life vests. So we don't have to worry about keys and things like that. But luckily this summer, we had a really good summer and just a few little patches.
Nice.
Good.
Cool. So Jen, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of how you ended up in this role. Like we mentioned, a few minutes ago, you spent many years with Universal. I know you went to UCF's Rosen College. You were an IAPA ambassador. That's how we know each other throughout all that. So can you actually just give us, I would say, a quick rundown of your background in the industry so far and how you ended up in this position with Empire Recreation Management?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be quick here. So I was with Universal Orlando Resort for about 12 years and started when I was a student at Rosen College. Had been an IAPA ambassador 1 year, and it was actually the following year. I think I remember telling you, Matt, hey, I got the job at Universal. I remember I got the job during IAPA. So it's really cool to be here. It comes full circle. But worked my way up through the front gate, through operations. So spent some time in guest services and admissions with VIP tours. I also had some experience with food service at Universal, so kind of bounced around a little bit. And then before leaving, I actually was over at our call center, at the contact center, managing the training team. So I really got a lot of experience in that time, primarily in operations, but had some exposure to all of the areas. In a big company like that, it's all about partnerships and networking and kind of knowing the right people and the right teams to get done what you need. So it was a great experience. And during that time, I actually had a little stint where I opened a business. I opened and ran and operated 2 franchises. So I owned and operated the Fun Bus, which were 2 kids fitness franchises. So I, had a little bit of business ownership in there as well, kind of while still working at Universal. So I feel that all of that, again, has really come full circle. And about 2 years ago, I was introduced to my current boss now, to the owners of the Empire Recreation Management, really just as a networking opportunity. My previous mentor had been doing some work with them and introduced me and said, hey, you really got to meet these guys. They're great guys. So I said, okay, cool. So we met, and that was kind of that. At the time, I was living in Florida, didn't think a whole lot of it, had a great career, loved what I was doing at Universal. But as life is and love goes, there was a move in my future. And so I was moving up to Michigan, and I kind of said, okay, I got to find something, because unfortunately we don't have Universal up here. And that really led me to the following year. So last year at IAPA, I actually had more of a formal interview and really kept that connection going. And here I am now. So I feel like it was just a great opportunity to take all of what I learned at Universal and then take some of the really hard lessons I learned as a business owner to really come in and step in this general manager role. The company is fairly new for WOZone. Our first parks opened back in 2017 with 1, grew to 2 in 2018, and then we were at 4 this year. And we've got plans for potentially 6 next year, and I just see us continuing to grow. So it's been a really cool opportunity to get in while really the company is still new and still blossoming, and to help shape the future of the WOZones and of Empire Recreation Management with a lot of that experience that I've had, and being able to lean on my connections to help me in some of those areas that maybe I'm not as strong in.
Yeah, Jen, there's a lot to unpack right there. So I wrote down like 3 different questions that I have. First of all, can you talk us through some of those hard lessons that you learned as a business owner? Something that maybe, an employee, even in a large company, wouldn't necessarily get to experience?
Absolutely. So I wouldn't trade it for the world, but like you said, it was just some hard lessons. So I think for me, it was a combination of learning to truly manage as an owner, as opposed to manage as an owner operator. So I worked my business, which a lot of first-time business owners, small business owners, you kind of have to when you start out. But I had a really hard time stepping back and kind of giving up the reins, because at the end of the day, for example, it was a school bus we drove and kids came on and we did fitness. So we didn't move with the kids, but my bus was run into a building a time or two when I wasn't driving. And as an employee, it's, oh gosh, I got to make that phone call. Oh, I hate to do that. But as the owner, it's my insurance that's changing. It's my bank account that's affected. And so I think kind of the lesson being, you've got to back up, but train your people the right way and really train them so that you can back up. But also going in, really you need to have a substantial cash flow to support that new business.
Yeah, for sure. If I might, real quick, Josh, because I also wanted to ask about, going from Universal, this big machine of a company, right, to a much smaller company, and kind of how that transition went, and even some of the things you took from Universal that now you can apply with Wozone.
Absolutely. So very different, obviously, just very different. It's been, in the beginning it was challenging, but I think it was more the shift to a working at home. So again, in hindsight, had I stayed with Universal, I would have probably been experiencing the same shift. So I was going through this change, but again, the whole world was kind of experiencing that. So I don't know that that's a fair comparison. But that was a big shift for me, was just going away from being in an office setting where I'm very outgoing. I love catching up and the small talk and checking in with everybody. And that really helps fuel my day, to I'm home and I'm virtually hiring and I'm in all these virtual meetings, but I hadn't moved yet. So I wasn't, in the operation. So that was challenging, I guess you could say. But as far as the differences, obviously with Universal, a large, huge corporation, policies and all of that, to a smaller corporation, I was actually really happy to find that a lot of the structure that I knew from Universal was already in place. Obviously, it was a little bit different. It was done in a different way, but it was there. But it was a great opportunity for me to come in and take what was existing, and then with my experience, especially my experience, from years of training and all of that, to really enhance the procedures and policies and all of that again, that Empire already had going.
Cool.
Nice. So my question, or kind of the thought that you sparked, was kind of going back to the previous statement of, you've got to back up and be able to train people, and kind of, everyone says, delegate, 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 but it's also kind of this vicious cycle of, I need to delegate in order to be successful, but I need to have that baseline of success in order to delegate. And, I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, like you can, outsource this and outsource that. And it's like, well, we don't have the funds to outsource it. Once we do, we'll have the time to, kind of the time versus money comparison. So maybe this kind of goes back to the fun bus, but being able to back up and train people while also kind of maintaining, full control of kind of the areas that you're able to, and kind of just own that space to get it to a point where people are able to be trained and more is able to be delegated out. You know what I mean?
Yes. So, and I think that is probably, and even I think as new leaders, and I probably experienced this in some of my roles in transitioning to different roles at Universal, when you dive into a new operation or a new business or new company, you immediately, I feel that you want to get immersed, so you get involved and you're all in. And sometimes it's hard to then step back and say, okay, because I'm so focused on learning my role or learning what I need to do, I also have, whether it's a team or a couple direct reports that, maybe I was counting on that knew what they were doing, but maybe they need my guidance as well and kind of need to be able to jump in. So I think it's being able to step back and say, okay, hey, I don't know everything, but I know enough of what needs to be trained, because I think it's just so easy to say, okay, I'll get to that. But right now it's easier if I just take care of it myself. And then you get into that vicious cycle, like you were saying, Josh, where it's just, you kind of go around and around and there's never enough time or enough money. And then at the end of the day, you're run ragged, and that's not good for anybody. So,
Right.
So I think it's being able to step back and kind of recognize that and be okay with not knowing everything.
And that's a hard thing to do, right? To admit that you don't know everything and be okay with that, be comfortable with that. So that's a tough place, I think, for a leader to be. But I think it's an important realization that we don't know everything and we do need help from other people, for sure.
For sure.
So I'd like to dive a little deeper into the whole networking piece, because you mentioned that you met your current boss like 2 years before you actually got that job there. So one of the other things you said was how important the relationships were when you were working at Universal, right? When you were working at this large corporation and knowing that there are certain teams that you have to work with and working with those folks. So I would imagine that some of those networking concepts kind of translate within the company as well as without the company or outside of the company. So can you tell us some of the things that you did from a networking standpoint that you found to be successful that has led you to where you are?
Absolutely. So honestly, I think it just comes down to something so simple. It's just be nice and treat people how you want to be treated. And I know, it's kind of funny when you say it, but unfortunately, just a lot of people that don't do business that way or just don't conduct themselves that way. But so for me, it's really forming those relationships and knowing, if I may need something from this person, so if this person is asking something of me or of my team. When I was in the VIP department at Universal, that's a really good example, because VIP tours, we were in high demand. Everybody needed a tour guide, no matter what, or something. And so it really helped me to learn that, if I can help, whatever that means, whether it's I'm rearranging instead of just, nope, sorry, I can't do that. Because again, I feel like especially in big companies, you run into people because it's not on their agenda. So you just kind of, nope. So I think it's just making other people's agenda items part of yours, because I think then when you need to kind of lean into that partnership, they are more than willing to say, absolutely, I'd be willing to help you out. Since joining the new company, I've actually leaned back on quite a few of my Universal partners, because in my new role, I, as a general manager, I'm doing a lot more than just operations. So there's a whole side of the business that I'm still learning. And there are things where I'm going, oh, I worked with, so-and-so, and they did this really well. And I've had a couple of really great phone calls and some email conversations just on, hey, what does this mean? Or how does this work? Or, what's your advice on this? And I've just found that everybody has been so willing and just kind of excited to help. And I think it comes back to, because when we worked together, again, we were nice, and, I'd help them if I could, and they would help me if they could. So.
Yeah, it's like making those deposits into that bank account in the event that you might need to make a withdrawal and call on someone, whether it's for a favor or advice or help or anything like that. And kind of the way I see it and the way you describe it is, networking almost has this like butterfly effect to it, that maybe the deposits that you're making today, or kind of the relationships that you're starting today, may pan out, 10 years from now, or years down the road. Some of them might not, probably most of them don't. The amount of people that, we've met at IAPA and shaken hands and, swapped business cards with, that, maybe they just went into a pile and kind of faded off, but it was those few that didn't, that ended up really being worth all of those business cards that sort of just kind of got filed away. And that you never know what this initial introduction might lead to many years down the road. I think that's a perfect example, that you gave, that, you met your current boss 2 years ago. You may or may not have known that, maybe you thought, oh, this is a nice person. I'll be nice to this individual right now, because that's in my nature to be nice. And now, it's panned out and worked out very nice. So, yeah. One of the things that, we're curious about too is, you mentioned the multiple different locations that you've got in Michigan, Indiana, Texas, and you can only be at one place at one time. And, having these operations in multiple locations that are kind of under your umbrella, versus, at Universal, where everything was very much kind of in one location, right? Or at least even one large property, that it was still kind of housed in one location without any travel needed. So curious about the challenges that you've encountered from running locations remotely.
So I would say overall, I think, more successes than challenges. And it really was because of the communication. So I think the challenges that would arise were the same as, when I was at Universal, whether it was in one park or two parks, was, a lack of or improper communication, because my team down in Texas, they were great with keeping me in the loop. We had regularly scheduled meetings, phone calls. Of course, again, kind of going back to COVID 2020, the way things happen kind of was evolving to where I needed them to be for the business anyways. So it was like this foreign concept of, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call because, about June, July, that's how we were seeing our friends. So I think that, kind of helped with that. But the challenges that would arise were really when it was a communication breakdown. In addition to managing all of the properties, I really was the kind of the day-to-day manager at the park in Michigan. I really kind of dove in and needed to fully immerse myself and learn the operation. So sometimes it was challenging because I was managing the team of 15 or so day to day. And then there were some, if something kind of came up in Texas and they were reaching out, but, I was servicing a line of 20 people and couldn't get back to them for another 30 minutes. So some of those more time sensitive communication things were some of the challenges. But again, if the communication kind of was proactive, we didn't really see too many challenges. So it comes down to communicating.
Yeah. And I found that too, working with so many different companies and working for so many different companies, that it really does come down to communication. So can you talk a little bit more about some of your, I guess, tactical, proactive actions that you took when it came to communicating? Because I think sometimes people just think, well, I'm just going to tell people our policies or tell people what's going on. But I think it goes deeper than that. So can you kind of share what your successes were from a communication standpoint?
Absolutely. So I think regular and consistent communication is big. If you have, whether it's weekly one-on-one calls or bi-weekly calls, then it kind of shifted depending on the different manager, because I think you've got to cater it to the person you're communicating with. So that's something, and through all of the wonderful learning and development classes I attended at Universal over the years, you've got to manage, you've got to cater your management style to who you're managing as well. So regular calls or meetings was definitely huge because it allowed my team to know, okay, hey, this really isn't a time sensitive thing. Maybe Jen needs to know this, but it doesn't have to be right now. I'm going to put it on my list so we can cover it, when we talk tomorrow. So just that regular communication. And then also follow up and feedback when there was a communication breakdown, instead of just going, I wish I would have known that sooner. Really having the conversation with that manager, with that team member, and going through, hey, here's what happened because of this breakdown. Here's our learning, and here's what we can do next time so that we don't have this breakdown.
Yeah, good stuff. So curious then, with the changes that were put in place for the 2020 season, what do you anticipate is going to carry over into 2021, or what are you looking at now? Because now you've got some downtime with the with the woe zones that are closed for the off season, which again, coming from Universal probably feels like a luxury in some aspects of being able to really kind of focus on what next year is going to look like. So what changes or modifications based off what you experienced in 2020 do you anticipate going forward?
Absolutely. So we are focusing on a lot. So one thing that, like I had mentioned before, we are keeping is that split park model for our bigger locations. And really reason being, obviously, regardless of where we're at with COVID next year, it kind of puts us ahead in that front, but it also provides a better guest experience. So in the hourly sessions, instead of, if you miss the hour by 10 minutes, you're now waiting for an entire hour, where this way we can allow you to start your experience in 20 minutes. So that'll be kind of a big change that we learned that was like, hey, this is a big win. But some of the other things we're looking at the park in Michigan, we run the camp store and the quick service restaurant concession stand. We're looking at doing a full remodel. This past year for COVID, we basically created windows, so we didn't have anybody coming into the building, but we're going to open the building back up this year. We want to look at getting some, higher quality, more food offerings, looking at some ice cream, and just really kind of upping the level of what we offer to our guests so that when you come to the beach, you don't have to go anywhere. We've got it all for you. Also looking at, now that I have, again, kind of some downtime, and I'll say that with quotation marks because I will say it's been a busy downtime, but really just looking at enhancing our system. So we're reevaluating our point of sale to, is that the most efficient, effective one? Looking at a lot of marketing efforts. I came on board last year really right before summer. So it was a lot of just operational, let's get things ready, let's figure out COVID and let's go. So now that I'm on full time, really going to be able to start reaching out to partners in the community with some of our schools and our camps and daycares and church groups and all of that. And then also getting, again, involved in the community more. We're getting involved in the chambers and the convention and visitors bureaus. So just really looking for ways to get our name out there and some opportunities for me to connect within the community to bring more awareness to our brand and get some other businesses out there taking advantage of it.
That's awesome. So I want to kind of ask you a little bit more about that general manager role, because you mentioned that you coming from Universal and running your own business, you were well versed in the operation. I'm curious what those other areas were that maybe had a little bit of a steeper learning curve. Like you were just mentioning marketing and things. And, sometimes when people come from operations, they're not as well versed in marketing, or, it's food and beverage or whatever it is. And now you're overseeing the entire operation. So I'm just curious, what were those things that had sort of a steeper learning curve for you?
So it's definitely, you hit the nail on the head. Marketing is probably my biggest opportunity area because, again, I don't have that experience. And looking back to it, the Fun Bus, that was an opportunity area for me at the time, was getting out the word about Fun Bus. So that's probably the biggest one that I'm really working through right now because when I joined, it was really, again, operation, let's get these parks going. So that's a big one. And then I think just, again, becoming more versed in my new community. I'm born and raised from Oviedo, Orlando area. I've never lived anywhere but Central Florida. So, not only I've moved to an entirely new place, and then visiting the parks in Texas, it's a lot of unfamiliar territory for me. So just making those partnerships, figuring out, again, okay, with this city, who does what and who's responsible, who's my partner for this. So learning all of those connections where, again, at Universal, even in different divisions, being there for so long, I kind of knew, most people, or, hey, if I have a marketing question, here's who I can go to. So it's kind of figuring out who the right partners are for the right things.
Cool.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that you are, I would say, recognizing kind of the gaps, things like, using marketing, but being able to maybe accelerate that curve to be able to get up to speed, or even using your operations background. Personally, I've got an operations background, and I think it's cool to look at marketing through an operational lens. And so curious if maybe that's kind of one of the things that you've been doing to say, okay, well, I don't know this, but I can fill in the gaps because I do know this area, and this is, and these are the areas that it overlaps. And, if that helps, and kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a marketing partner that does help us with our marketing efforts. And it's been really fun to have conversations with him because, again, I'm coming from the operator and going, but the guest will say this when they see this messaging. And from the marketing standpoint, it's like, they won't say that. I'm like, no, but they will. So kind of having those discussions has been good. And I think, I've taught him a few things. He's taught me a lot. But that's been really cool to be able to do because like you said, Josh, knowing it from that operator side, it's a whole different ballgame from the folks that are sitting in the back office pushing the content out. The other piece too that I'm looking at is, or that I kind of leaned on, is I've got, I have a little side gig that I kind of have done. And it really is something that I've learned a lot from, that I've been able to pull pieces from to help me with this. It's a very different business model, but just some of the things I've learned from, as far as kind of getting your name out on social media and what an algorithm is on Instagram, those kind of things that are becoming more and more common. But when I was starting, it was like, I don't know what this means. so just kind of tapping into the different resources that I have. And then, like we mentioned, kind of with this downtime a little bit, watching more webinars, listening to the right podcast, reading the right books for personal development. So really just trying to get myself up to speed while I've got the time and we're not, in that peak of summer.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people have kind of been talking about that, using this time for, development and getting better and, filling in those gaps that you might not have. There's a quick tie into the next thing I want to talk about, because it's about development. And, I don't know if it was you or Josh mentioned being an IAPA ambassador. I think you may have mentioned it, and Josh definitely talked about that. One of the things that I was really bummed about this year with the virtual education conference at IAPA was that there were no ambassadors, right? And that's something that, I think is a wonderful, wonderful program for IAPA and for people that can go through that sort of boot camp, if you will, for that week. And so many people call it the best week of their lives, and some people come back year after year. But I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about that experience as an IAPA ambassador way back when, and even how that may have helped you, in networking or business operations or whatever it might have been to help you, again, be successful.
Sure. So, with IAPA, my first year, so I was an ambassador in 2007 and 2008. So it's been a while. But when I joined, I had actually just decided I was going to be a hospitality major. I originally went to school for elementary education, but my hospitality, intro to hospitality professor really kind of changed. I was like, no, this is where I need to be. I need to be in theme parks. I grew up going to the parks. So when I saw IAPA was coming to Orlando, I said, oh, this is for me. And when I went, I don't think I realized what I was getting into, because again, I was not in the industry. I didn't really know anybody in the industry. I just thought, cool, I got into this internship and I get to go stay in a hotel and help for a week. But from day one, it just instantly, it was amazing the amount of teamwork that the ambassadors put in and the bonds. I could see that the bonds that had been created from the previous year's ambassadors, and obviously that had continued to grow. Some of, the best relationships and closest friends I have today, I met at IAPA. So I think it was just the ability to connect with people that were really on the same page as me. We're young professionals wanting to get into the industry. Some of them had already gotten their foot in the door. So it was really being able to lean on each other and kind of leverage that experience. But then, like you said, it was probably some of the most fun I've ever had, because you work really hard, but you have fun too. And I think that's what was so cool about it. It wasn't this, hey, we're going to come and we're just working all the time and you're going to work and you're going to sleep and that's that. And, thanks for the free labor. It was, we're going to work really hard, but you're sitting in on these educational sessions that are going to help you for your future career. You're getting to explore the trade show floor. Again, making connections with the other ambassadors, with our guest speakers who came in. Again, I think that's how we met. You came in, I believe, as a guest speaker. And I don't know that I knew much about networking before that. My previous career experience, I had some restaurant, but I coached gymnastics and taught dance and did summer camps and birthday parties. So again, really full circle with where I'm at with Wozone now. But at the time, I was like, I don't know what it means to work in a theme park. So it was really cool to get that intro. And I think that, I guess, really fueled the spark that I had into the flame of, okay, this is where my career is going. This is what I'm doing. And it just, I miss it. I'm sad that we weren't in person this year, but I do agree. I think, not having the ambassadors this year, it's just such a great experience for a group of like-minded individuals to get together. And then, here we are.
Yeah.
8 years, 9 years, 10 years later.
All right.
And I would echo all of that too, because Jen, that's how we met in the ambassador program in 2007. So I guess a quick side note for anyone that might be listening who's a college student or considering the IAPA ambassador program, God willing, we're all able to meet again in person, in November of 2021, that it's definitely, if you're passionate about the industry and building a career in it, that it's absolutely worth pursuing, worth applying for. One of the things that I think I remember as being one of my biggest takeaways was, it was the first time I had ever been to a trade show. And, particularly, obviously, especially in the industry, I was working, in the Magic Kingdom part-time. I had done, a couple of summers at Cedar Point before that, but it was the first time that I ever really felt like I was doing grown-up stuff, if that makes sense. Like, I'm dressed up, everyone else is dressed up, and like people are here to actually do business and like make deals and like generate like the, and now obviously like it's all so normal, but I think I just remember that like switching on of like, oh, like this is the most adult thing I've ever done. Prior to that, it's operating rides and it's fun and it's operations. And now it's like, oh, now there's an actual real impact on, on businesses and the economy and all that. Which I thought was just kind of a fun takeaway from that.
Absolutely. And I'll still remember, and I hope it's relevant to me again, but I remember it was probably day 1 or 2, our ambassador leader teaching us how to shake hands, and that whether you're a woman or you're a man, you got to have a strong handshake. And I mean, I probably every time I shake hands with somebody still think about that. And obviously now we don't shake hands anymore, so I don't know if that's relevant, but I mean, that stuck with me, and just her, saying just because you're a woman, you can have a strong handshake and show that you mean business. And I remember going, oh, okay, like that's cool. I can make a name for myself in this industry. And I just, that for sure stuck with me. And like you said, they're just all the memories. They've been popping up lately since it's been same week. So definitely some good times.
Yeah, it's that time when we all say it's the most wonderful time of year, right? Christmas is nice, the holidays are nice, but IAPA week is the most wonderful time of the year. So, well, Jen, this has been a fabulous conversation, and so appreciate your time. So a couple of kind of lasting questions. First of all, if you had some, last words of wisdom or things that you would like to share with other people in the industry, what would that be?
Okay, my last words of wisdom. I think it's take your experiences, soak them in, learn from them, and then grow from them. And what I mean by that is where I'm at now in my career, I will tell you, 10 years ago, I would have never guessed in a million years I'd be here. 5 years ago, I would have never guessed I would have been driving a school bus, doing gymnastics for children. And, 5 years before that, I probably would have never guessed I would have been managing at Universal. So I think it's take the experiences that you have and appreciate them for what they are, learn from them, and then use them to fuel you to grow. So you may be doing things that are totally unrelated, but give it time, because chances are you're going to be able to tie it all together to find something that you're passionate about. And, I think that's what it's all about. We've got to work, but I can't be miserable for 40 hours a week. So I have to do something that I love. And let's be honest, it's usually more than 40 hours. So you've got to find something that you love. And so take that experience and put it together so that you can find something that just brings you joy every day.
I love that. So Jen, if people wanted to find out more about you or Wozone, where would you send them?
Absolutely. So you can visit us online at wo.zone, so WHOA.zone, and all of our contact information is there. And we will actually I'm going to put in a little plug here, because I will be looking for leaders for the summer of 2021. We've got some new locations opening, and really this year, as the general manager, I will be stepping back a little bit. So I will be looking for some strong leadership at all of our locations. So there are any young professionals out there listening or, thinking that, hey, this could be a good opportunity or a resume builder, please reach out and, can visit us at wo.zone.
That's awesome.
And Jen, will the job postings be on your website, or would they look someplace else for those?
Yes, they will be on the website, but feel free to, if you're listening to this when it launches, if you want, because we'll be a little ways away from summer still, you can always shoot an email over to me, and we can kind of get a conversation started. So don't feel like you've got to wait until summer, if you want to at least just reach out and introduce yourself. I am also on LinkedIn, Jen.Rice. You can find me there too.
Awesome.
And the locations being in around Holly, Michigan, North Indiana, and where is it in Texas?
And the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Texas, and then potentially looking at some locations over in Ohio as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yeah, we'll include that in the show notes as well. So
great, thank you.
Yeah, well, Jen, this was like Matt said, this was a fantastic conversation. Always great to catch up with you. Really glad that we were able to do this on the podcast. And for everyone who is out there listening or watching, just remember, we are all Attraction Pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit AttractionPros.com.